CBS 12 starts now with breaking news.
Breaking news right now. You are taking a live look at the House of Representatives on Capitol Hill, where House members have just voted to repeal President Barack Obama's signature health care reform law. Good evening, everyone. I'm Suzanne Boyd.
And I'm Eric Roby. Thanks for joining us tonight. Now, some are calling this just a political stunt in an election year, but Republicans say they are sincere.
The House just voted 244 to 185 to repeal that health care law. CBS 12's Liz Quirantes joining us live with more on the late-breaking details. And to put it into perspective, Liz?
Well, Suzanne, they promised they were going to do it, and they did. The Republican-controlled House took its 33rd vote to scrap President Obama's health care reform law. Republicans promised this repeal vote the same day the Supreme Court ruled that the Affordable Care Act, Health Care Act, is constitutional. Republicans know their repeal effort is doomed in the Democrat-controlled Senate, but the vote forces everyone to go on the record as for or against the law this campaign season. Democrats called the repeal effort a political stunt.
This is a law, Madam Speaker, that the American people did not want when it was passed, and it remains a law that the American people do not want now.
Repealing the Affordable Care Act is wrong. It was wrong the first time. It is wrong the 31st time. Welcome to Groundhog Day in the House of Representatives.
Now, most Democrats argued in strong support of the law, but a handful in tough re-election fights voted for the repeal. Now, several House Democrats lost their seats in 2010, in part because they voted for the Affordable Care Act. I suppose the voters will get the final say in November. Stay tuned. Back to you in the studio.
All right. Thank you, Liz. In fact, 5 Democrats crossed aisles and voted against the health care reform. Well, team coverage continues tonight. Congressional Republicans have voted 33 times to repeal, defund, or dismantle President Obama's health care law. But it is a waste of time, or is it a waste of time for taxpayers? With the Democratic-controlled Senate, CBS 12's Ben Becker joining us live in the newsroom with more on tonight's Waste Watch report. So good question here, Ben.
Well, Eric, you know, it's not just the unachievable repeal of health care reform. Republican and Democratic lawmakers are expected to pass very few bills in the next few weeks. All this non-action is a form of prevent defense ahead of the November elections, and it comes with a price for taxpayers.
The $2 billion that they spend is probably money well earned if they don't do anything.
Tim Gilbert is a political science professor at Northwood University. Taxpayers spend more than $2 billion a year to run both the House and the Senate. According to the Congressional Research Service, running the House costs about $24 million a week. It costs $17 million per week to run the Senate. Yet little will be done for the next 4 weeks.
Everything at this point in time has to do with re-election. In the House of Representatives, everybody's up for re-election, and so it's really a critical thing.
Gilbert says lawmakers on Capitol Hill are pushing off disputes over taxes, spending, borrowing, immigration, and foreign policy until after the election. Instead, Congress has mired itself in a faux legislative session, but the money paying for it is real.
I think if they were private business, they'd probably go bankrupt. I don't think we're getting the bang for the buck that we deserve.
Bob Michaels is a voter and is frustrated by what he sees in Washington.
I sometimes think that they forget that they work for us. Somewhere along the line, I think the system broke down.
How broke are things right now? Even a bill to authorize defense spending, which traditionally has bipartisan backing, is unlikely to come up in the Senate for a vote before Election Day. Democrats feel it could help Mitt Romney score political points against President Obama if there are defense cuts.
And nobody's in agreement. Nobody wants to do anything about it because, again, it's election time, and no matter how you slice it, you're going to go back to your constituents, and it's not going to be a good deal.
Now, one item that will be discussed in the coming weeks is whether to extend the Bush-era tax cuts, but it's likely that decision, like many, will come after Election Day. Reporting live in the newsroom, Ben Becker, CBS 12 News.
All right, thank you, Ben. Continuing coverage at 5 o'clock, we talk to a health care physician about the unanswered questions about the new Affordable Care Act, including whether health care professionals will be forced to perform procedures that they may find morally questionable.
This just in, power has been restored to Bethesda Memorial Hospital. This morning, storms knocked out power to the Boynton Beach Hospital around noon today. It forced the hospital officials to cancel all elective surgeries. The emergency room had full power, though, and remained open. FPL restored Bethesda's electricity around 2:30 this afternoon. And that weather system made for a wet morning. This is what many of us woke up to this morning. Torrential downpours made for an absolute mess. The rain didn't last all day though, and eventually has cleared out of here. So let's get right over to Chief Meteorologist John Matthews for a first look at our forecast. And John, I saw some local street flooding in my neighborhood this morning.
Yeah, we had heavy downpours, and of course they started last night, overnight. So we had some overnight rain and morning showers. But look at the radar now. All is cleared up and all the rain is done. And we've seen a little bit of sunshine peeking in and out the door here as we've gone through our afternoon. Here's some of the rainfall totals, which I have to admit are kind of disappointing after all that lightning and thunder and all that morning rain. Most of us only saw less than half of an inch or even a quarter of an inch. So there's kind of a rainfall total. When I come back, we'll take a look at what's ahead for you, including the weekend and viewer pictures. I'll be back in a minute.
All right, thank you, John. Covered in more than 60 tumors, a local veteran is now taking his VA claim all the way to Washington. But as we uncover in the CBS 12 exclusive, there are dozens more facing the same fate, all who served at a military base for chemical and biological warfare testing during the Vietnam War. CBS 12's Jenna Ashbach has this investigation from Stewart.
He began serving his country in 1954, but when his appeals to the congressman's office were denied, he's now taking it all the way to the Department of Justice.
I don't know why I have them, you know, and what's causing it.
Since his days spent serving the mess hall at Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah,
I got some more going here.
a testing site for biowarfare and chemicals,
Sometimes they stay about that size, but
Sal Conti counts the tumors growing on his body.
I had over 60 of them removed from my body.
In the last decade, he had a 5-pound impacted tumor removed from his spine and lost his jaw to palate cancer.
From here, from my nose, tip of my nose to the back here, they had removed my whole jaw. I never smoked a cigarette in my whole life. Never wanted to, you know. But I says, why do I get cancer of the palate?
The claims submitted to Veterans Affairs under the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act of 2006, all denied. In fact, it says his condition is not related to radiation exposure, and the government will cover 0% of his medical issues.
They don't want to admit it. If they admit it, then a lot of guys that were stationed there at that time that got a disease would probably put claims in. So in the meantime, they're going to not admit that they were doing all this stuff.
Congressman Tom Rooney's office agrees.
We think there's significant evidence that this should be covered by VA, and so we've worked with him to file multiple deals with VA. We're now working with the Department of Justice through a program that they've set up to file a civil claim to get his nuclear exposure covered.
Well, but what happens if they don't cover this? Do you have to go out of pocket for it?
Well, I'm going out of pocket every time I go to the VA.
At Dugway, we now know scientists and technicians from the 1950s and 60s who've been diagnosed with lung cancer are being covered by veterans' benefits. But the congressman's office says there are 6 more soldiers' cases like Sal suffering from chemical exposure at Dugway, and dozens more who have already died. Their claims, too, have all been denied. The congressman's office says even if this appeal is denied, they'll file another claim until Mr. Conti gets his benefits. In Stewart, Jenna Ashbach, CBS 12 News.
Now, a Senate Veterans Affairs Committee confirms more than 1,000 open-air tests of biological and chemical agents were released at the Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah, all while Sal Conti was on that base. We will keep you posted on his progress during this investigation.
A judge is allowing former WPTV weatherman Rob Lopicola to get out of jail after his arrest on charges he had sex with 2 underage boys. The judge set Lopicola's bond at $130,000. He also ordered him on house arrest with GPS monitoring, to have no access to the internet and no contact with the 2 alleged victims or anyone under the age of 18. Authorities arrested Lopicola on Monday night on allegations dating back to 2010 that he met a 15 and 17-year-old boy on Craigslist and then engaged in sex acts with them. Lopicola was a weather forecaster at WPTV for about 8 years, but left abruptly in 2006.
New information at 5 o'clock. Indian River County deputies make an arrest in a murder that happened late last year. This is where Douglas Frazier's badly decomposed body was discovered by lawn maintenance workers back in December 2011. Deputies arrested 23-year-old Eddie Gibson. He's facing second-degree murder charges, but the state will later seek first-degree murder charges. He's being being held at the Indian River County Jail on a $250,000 bond.
Keeping an eye on education at 5 school letter grades are out, and they are down. Dozens of local schools saw their grades fall. CBS 12's Chuck Weber is live at one of those schools with why this was not a surprise. Chuck?
Yeah, I'm here at Wellington Elementary, which is one of the schools that saw its letter grade fall, in this case from an A to a B. School grades out today for elementary and middle schools. High school grades coming out in a few months. There were new, more rigorous standards for grading the schools this year, so these falling grades were not expected. A school's letter grade, a sign for parents and a matter of prestige for students, staff, and parents. But this year in Palm Beach County alone, dozens of elementary and middle schools saw their grades fall.
We did go down about 44 points, but we managed to stay at an A.
Denise Ornelas teaches at Jupiter Elementary, which held on to its A grade.
So we're happy about that. Yeah, it's sad to hear that other schools, went down. 44
schools in Palm Beach County saw their letter grades drop this year. Just 12 schools had grades go up, and 91 schools stayed the same.
The tests that they took this year included higher and more rigorous standards.
The county's chief academic officer, Dr. Janice Andrews, says Florida joined 44 other states working toward common, internationally benchmarked standards.
So our standards will continue to go up over the next several years.
And the grade drops could have been worse than what they were. The State Board of Education decided just for this year, letter grades could only drop by 1.
They keep changing it. They go from up and down. So it's confusing.
If there's any consolation, Dr. Andrews says Palm Beach County had a higher percentage of A schools than the statewide average at both elementary and middle school levels.
So although we had the higher standards, we actually were pleased that we were able to have the schools perform as well as they did.
Keep the bar up, but help the students and help the schools.
And the school district says it does have plans to help the students and schools keep up with these ever toughening standards. Again, the grades falling today was expected. All new at 6 o'clock now, we're going to hear from parents here at Wellington Elementary School boundaries, what they feel about the falling grade here and also the emphasis on testing. Live in Wellington, Chuck Weber, CBS 12 News.
All right, thanks, Chuck. And if you want to learn more about how your child's school performed, we have put the entire list on our website. Just head to CBS 12 and click on the links section, cbs12.com. There you will be directed to the site where you can find a list of all the schools and their grades. All right, coming up, all new at 6 o'clock tonight, we are going to be hearing from the parents there at Wellington Elementary who went from an A to a B school, what they have to say about it.
Well, one local city wants healthier workers, but its plan to get there is a controversial one. What it means for those who smoke and for those who don't.
Plus, a massive train derailment rocks an Ohio community. The explosion, the evacuations, and the dramatic scene. We are taking you live there next.
And a warning for parents about baby monitors, why the tool that's supposed to be keeping your child safe could actually be putting them in danger. Welcome back, everyone. News around the globe tonight at 5 o'clock. The captain of the cruise ship that ran aground off of Italy's coast has apologized tonight. Francisco Scatino said that he had been distracted when the Costa Concordia ship struck a rock. He reportedly said that he thinks constantly about the victims, but insists that others should share the blame for the disaster. The captain was recently freed from house arrest. Prosecutors say that he's facing allegations of manslaughter, causing a shipwreck, and abandoning ship. 32 people died in the Costa Concordia accident back in January. Closer to home, and now in Florida, where the university president of Florida A&M, James Ammons, has resigned. This happening the same day the parents of Robert Champion added FAMU to a wrongful death lawsuit, saying that university officials didn't do enough to stop hazing at the school. The drum major died in November after allegedly being beaten by fellow band members in a bus after a football game in Orlando. Ammons' letter to the university's governing board stated that his resignation would take place October 11th. 13 band members have been charged in his death, and the band has been suspended until next year.
We are following a dramatic scene out of Columbus, Ohio today, where a freight train carrying ethanol